Hey everybody, I'm Chris Provost from Provost Park Pass, and a lot has happened in the last 16 hours in the world of Disney. Now I'm going to break down exactly what happened and the order that it happened in and what that's going to probably mean for Walt Disney World and Disneyland. Now if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button because anytime we get new information, I'll go ahead and be posting that here. So let's see what happened here. Yesterday was Tuesday, May 5th. Disney had their earnings call, and during this earnings call, everybody kind of knew that it was going to be a rougher earnings call because there are a lot of Disney products. Everything's going to come to a halt. During this earnings call, CEO Bob Chapek, he announced right in the middle of the earnings call, he announced that they were opening up Disneyland Shanghai on May 11th. This is less than a week away from what this earnings call was. This is on a Tuesday, and he says, hey, we're going to open it up on Monday, and this people are like, what is going on? This is people been speculating, but nothing had been heard. And he just made that right there in the middle of that phone call. Hey, we're opening up Shanghai Disney on May 11th. Now, of course, I think it's a smart business move to do, by the way, because then people weren't really focusing on so much the earnings as much as they're focusing on the parks reopening. This is a huge announcement because this is the first major theme park to really be reopening in the world at this time. All theme parks are going to be watching what's happening in Shanghai and how it's working there and the practices that they're going to be doing and how that's going to affect their parks when they open up in the United States and around the world. After this call was done, right after the earnings call was done, then Mr. Chapek, the CEO, he then sent an email out to Disney employees. And I'm going to read parts of this email to you guys. Keep in mind, I'm not a Disneyland employee. Disney's awesome. I wish I was an employee, but I have cast members there who send me stuff and let me know what's going on. And he sent this email out to all the employees right after the earnings call. I'm going to kind of skip. I'm only going to talk about the parts that talk about the parks reopening, as the rest of it's talking about like ESPN, movie productions, and things like that. So let's get right just to the meat of here. While it's too early to predict when we'll be able to begin resuming operations to all our parks and resorts, today we announced that we plan to open Shanghai Disneyland on May 11th. The decision follows the successful reopening of the resort's downtown area and the return to a semblance of normalcy in China in recent weeks with the lifting of certain restrictions. We will be taking cautious, phased approach with limits on attendance, controlled guest density, and using social distancing and enforcement of all government-required health and prevention procedures. So, earnings call happened. He announces we're opening up Shanghai Disney on May 11th. Right after that meeting was done, that call was done, then email was sent out to the employees saying, hey, we are going to be opening this up. Then after that, they started releasing what are the procedures and what are they going to be doing and how are they going to open up the park. So let's take a look at some of the things that were said there. And this is where it gets very interesting because I think these are the things that are going to happen with at Walt Disney World and Disneyland. I think they're going to see what was successful there, what's not successful there, and they'll be able to move forward with that. So during the Q&A section of the earnings call, Bob Chapek says that Shanghai Disney has a maximum guest capacity of about 80,000 guests. He said that they're going to be, they will cap that. They'll run at 30% of that. 30% will be the maximum amount they let in because of the 30% of maximum capacity, meaning, let me read that again. The local government has indicated that the park is to be run at 30%. So the local government told Disney, if you're going to reopen, you can only open at 30%. And since the maximum capacity is 80,000, that would put it around about 24,000 guests allowed into Disneyland Shanghai. So Disneyland Shanghai will be operating at 34%. Then after that email was sent out, that's when they showed all the different procedures that they're going to be having in Disneyland Shanghai and what they'll be doing to reopen the park. And this is where I think it gets super interested in because I think this is what's going to happen maybe in Walt Disney World and Disneyland. So let's go through this point by point. First part. They'll have a limited and what's called post attendance with an advanced reservation and entry system. Visitors will only be able to buy admission tickets for selected dates, and annual pass holders will have to make reservations in advance. This is a big one. So what it's really doing is eliminating the spontaneous of like, hey, let's go to Disneyland. Like you wake up, when my wife and I used to live in California, we'd wake up and maybe like on Thursday afternoon, be like, hey, do you want to go to Disney Park tonight and hang out? And we're like, yeah, sure. Just kind of drive down and check out what's going on at Disney. We like being in the Disney parks. That's no longer going to be an option for a while, it sounds like. What they're doing is you have to have a reservation. You can't go in and buy same-day ticket advance sales to get into Shanghai Disney. You have to pre-purchase your tickets on selected dates and then be able to go in. If you have an annual passport, you're going to have to make a reservation in order to get into the park. It's kind of like, for those of you who have what's, I think, the Flex Pass. There's a Flex Pass, annual pass. A Flex Pass is currently done in Disneyland, where you have an annual pass for it, but you have to make reservations, and you can only go up to 30 days in advance and make some reservations. So it sounds like they're kind of doing something along those lines of a Flex Pass at Disneyland Shanghai at this time. Now, a lot of people will be asking, well, hey, that's not fair. We paid for full access to annual passes. I understand that. I don't know how Disney is going to handle that, but I'm sure that they will. But keep in mind, this is a phased approach at this time, just in Shanghai, and it's what they're doing. So that's the first thing, limited and post attendance. Second thing they're doing in Shanghai is controlled guest density. Lines will be spaced out and ride vehicles will be loaded to meet social distancing guidelines. Now, when you read that sentence, it sounds like, oh yeah, of course, they're going to space out the lines. But it's the second part of that sentence right here. Ride vehicles will be loaded to meet social distancing guidelines. If you read it really fast, you might skip right over that. What that's probably saying is that they are going to, like, I'm thinking like Pirates Caribbean, rather than loading the boat all the way full, you'll be loading with your guests, your party, and then maybe you'll have a row or two that'll be empty, and then another party will be put in. They're not going to be loading at capacity. Maybe like on Space Mountain, the first two seats will be taken, the next two will be empty, and then the next two. This is speculation on my part. I'm just reading what it says. They'll be doing limited ride capacity here. So maybe like a Haunted Mansion, every other Doom Buggy. I'm not exactly sure, but that means that they are going to be, the load and social distancing guidelines will be adhered to during the rides. So I think a lot of people think themselves, like, I know there's the diehard Disney fans are like, I'm going to go on opening day because if it's a limited capacity, it's like a dream come true because it's going to be awesome. Even though it might be a limited capacity, it might feel like it's a higher capacity because they're operating the rides at less capacity, if that makes sense. Okay, implementation number 3 that they're doing. They're implementing required government health and prevention procedures. Disney will screen visitors' temperatures and implement use of the government-issued Shanghai Health QR code, which is contact tracing and early detection system used in China. So one of the things on that there says at Disney, they will be doing temperature checks when people come into the parks. Everybody's going to get their temperature checks, and that'll be happening. The other thing that they're doing there in Shanghai is these QR codes. China has these QR codes you wear on your wrist. They're green, and if you've been tested that you're okay, and or you've had it and you've gone over it, then you can get these QR codes and can scan you. You have to have one of those QR codes in order to get into Disneyland Shanghai. If you don't have one of those QR codes, they will not let you in to the park. Now, currently in the United States, we don't have anything like that going on. So I don't know how that would be implemented in Walt Disney World or Disneyland, but that is something they are doing in China. The next thing they're doing is implementing sanitation and disinfection measures. The park will make hand sanitizer available at the start of each entrance and exit to the rides. And attractions said with high touch locations, it's literally in quotes, high touch locations, such as ride vehicles, handlebars, queue railings, and turnstiles will have increased sanitation. So they're going to be wiping those down, it sounds like, making sure that everything is being sanitized as quickly as possible. Now, the last thing that they're going to be doing is training for cast members, which I think is fantastic. Training for cast members. Disneyland workers will receive training on contactless guest interaction. Cleaning and social distancing will receive additional protective equipment and include masks. So this means that if you are a cast member, in Shanghai, it sounds like you will be wearing a protective mask, and which is fantastic. Also, they've announced that they're going to have limited. There won't be any parades at this time in Shanghai. Character and meet and greets. They will not have meet and greets. You cannot meet with characters. They will have characters in the park, but you can't go interact with them. I think you do photos. You can see them like, oh, there's Disney. There's Mickey. Click, click, click. Do a photo or so. But they're not allowing you to actually interact with the characters at this time, keeping those social distancing parameters. Now, that was the parameters for Shanghai. Interesting. Then after that, what happened was, after all of that happened, another email went out, and the email was from, let me pull this up here. Hold on one second. is from Dr. Pamela. Here we go. Boop. I apologize. Dr. Pamela Heimel. And she is the chief medical officer for Disney. And she sent out not like an email, but she put out this on the web blog, on the Disney's website, the measures that they're going to be doing for Disneyland. Now, what's interesting is the measures that she's talking about sound more like what's going to be happening in the at Disneyland and Walt Disney World rather than Shanghai. So let's go ahead and get into those right now. So let me pull this up here. Apologize. Okay, Dr. Pamela Heimel, she wrote this. The first part of the message that she wrote to dear guests, and this is on Disneyland website, is just saying how grateful she is to be working for Disney and what a great corporation it is. And she is the chief medical officer. But let me get down to kind of the meat of what she's talking about here. We're evaluating several new and enhanced safety measures to do our part towards helping us stay well while we work, stay and play at Disney resorts and at Disney Store. I'm also working closely with the U.S. Travel Association on a set of guidelines the travel industry may tailor to their individual businesses to help demonstrate the safety of travelers is a top focus. That's why I think this one here, when she's starting to talk about these measures here, I don't think they're not talking about Shanghai. This is talking about what they'll probably be doing here in the United States of America, because she mentioned that she's working with the top U.S. Travel Association. All right. To that end, I want to share an update with you about our plans and considerations as we prepare for the reopening of our parks, resorts, and stores. At Disney, we're exploring, and then here she goes. Number one, a phased reopening. We are looking at all of our locations and how best to begin a reopening process, including a gradual reopening and or partial reopening of certain locations. For example, the opening of retail and dining locations prior to the opening of our theme parks. So I think it sounds like that they're thinking maybe opening up like downtown Disney or Disney Springs, get those kind of up and going a little bit before they open up the parks, doing this gradual opening. That's what they did in Shanghai. Shanghai, they opened up some restaurants and their downtown Disney with limited capacity, and watch that, make sure that everything was going, and then they get ready to open up the parks. Next, physical distancing and capacity measures. As you can imagine, managing guest densities in queues, restaurants, hotels, riding vehicles, and other facilities throughout the park and across the resort is a major focus. We will implement physical distancing guidelines based on a guidance from health authorities, such as the CDC and appropriate government agencies. This will likely include implementation of guest capacity measures to comply with state and federal guidelines. We're also exploring ways to use technology to aid in these efforts now this is important, with our Play Disney park apps and through virtual queues at Disneyland and Walt Disney World. That last part, that last little there, that little tacked on part is probably one of the biggest telltale signs that Disney has done yet. So what she says here is that they're thinking about doing virtual queue rides, virtual queues for Disneyland and Walt Disney World. This is the first time we've heard rumors about virtual queues, but this is the first time it's been put in as written form. And she mentions like the Disney Park Play app. So I'm thinking what she's kind of saying or alluding to is, and keep in mind this is speculation because I didn't go into it, is that you get on the app and you probably see all the wait times for rides, and you're like, I want to go on this ride, and then you'll be waiting for that ride, and then you'll get notified when it's your turn to go get on that ride. So that we don't have to literally stand in line, you're in a virtual queue as you continue to walk around the park, and then as you go on to the next ride, you click on the next ride and get in that virtual queue there. So it sounds like that is the direction they'll be going for at Disneyland and Walt Disney World. At least that's what they're considering at this particular time. Next thing that Dr. Hayden says is cleanliness and sanitation. We're planning increased cleaning and disinfection, determining where we should take place, for example, high traffic areas and cleaning products and processes we'll use. So they're just kind of going to probably be copying what they're doing in Shanghai, having lots of disinfection and having things wiped down. Screening and prevention support. We'll follow guidance from the government and medical community regarding enhanced screening, procedures, and prevention measures, including those related to personal protective equipment. You might have heard that term called PPE, that's personal protective, such as face coverings, that they're going to be allowing that to be happening in the park. And then lastly, she talks about cast training. We'll further emphasize our strong culture of health and safety amongst our cast members, and we'll continue to provide our new training and reinforcement as we get closer to reopening. And then she says, these are just a few examples of the many areas we are developing plans so far. Please keep an eye on our online channels. We'll provide more details and we'll confirm and begin to implement our plans. So here's some big takeaways for me. When they announced that Disneyland Shanghai was going to open it up, they did it quickly. It was like 6 days they said we're opening up. They didn't give a huge leeway. Like they're not saying, okay, in 20 days we'll be opening up. It was like, bam. which maybe is probably what they'll do with Walt Disney World and then Disneyland. It's speculated at this time right now, Walt Disney World will probably open up first, then Disneyland will open up after that, just because of the different, what's going on in Florida and California, a totally different beast right now, so they're going to try to accommodate that. Also, limited reservations. If those first couple days or first phase that it's opening up, sounds like you will have to have some type of reservation to get into the park. I'm making an assumption that if you're staying at an on-property hotel, you'll probably get in. It's much like they did with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. When it opened up, everybody wanted to be there, and so they guaranteed if you are staying on property or hotel that you would get in, and then other people are putting in reservations. So I'm assuming that if you are staying on property, you'll most likely will be able to get in. They'll have a guarantee for that, and then after that you'll have to do reservations, even if you have an annual pass. At the very first implementation part of the parks, which is something that'll be new. A lot of people have to get used to that. Keep in mind, Disney, last thing they want to do is have a flare-up in the parks. They want to take care of every measure to make sure everything is handled and working well at the Disney park. So this is an exciting time. At least we're going to be getting the magic back in the world. We're going to have the first Disney theme park to be reopening on May 11th. And we'll have a Disney park operating within the world. And I'm sure all the theme parks around the world, everybody's going to be focused in right then and saying, how's it going? Because that is going to determine how the rest of the world will be opening up the rest of the parks. So hopefully they'll handle things and the things go well for us. I'm excited to see this. If you have any comments or questions, go ahead and put that down below. Let me know what you're thinking. If I missed any information, I'd love to hear that. And I'd like to give a huge shout out to all the cast members. Once this was happening during that call, I was getting tons of emails and text messages from people, and I appreciate you guys, and thank you so much for supporting Provo's Park Pass. All right, guys, have a safe day. Be smart, be healthy, wash your hands a lot, don't touch your face. Deep breaths. We're gonna get through this. The world's reopening.